The apartment didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a question the universe refused to answer. Cold slipped in under the door and through the cracked window, turning the air thin and sharp. A single candle fought back the darkness, its flame shaking as if it too was scared of the night. On the worn kitchen tiles, Leora sat with her knees pulled to her chest, a fraying baby blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The blanket had once been soft and thick. Now it was tired. Like her. In her arms, Erin cried, not the loud, dramatic wails of a child who dropped a toy, the small, broken sobs of a baby who didn't understand why his stomach hurt. His cheeks were damp. His fists kept tugging at her shirt, searching. His tiny mouth kept rooting against her, desperate, hungry, confused. The empty formula tin on the counter felt like an accusation. Leora tried not to look at it. She already knew every scratch on its metal rim. She knew exactly how it sounded when she shook it and nothing came out. She'd done that 3 times today, just in case the laws of reality changed. They hadn't. She'd watered down his last 2 bottles until they were mostly cloudy liquid. It hadn't fooled his body. It barely bought her a few hours of silence. Now even that illusion was gone. Her phone lay on the cracked floor next to her, face down, battery at 3%. She stared at it like it was a bomb, not a lifeline. She had already sold everything sellable, borrowed from everyone, borrowable, apologized so many times her apologies no longer sounded like words. Her pride was thin. Her fear was thick. Erin's cry rose in pitch, a desperate little plea. Leora squeezed her eyes shut as tears slid out anyway. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, even though it wasn't. "Mama's here. I'm here. I'll fix it." But how? Her cousin had helped once, reluctantly, with lectures and sighs and warnings about being responsible. Leora had promised herself she'd never ask again. Then Erin's stomach growled in her arms. Pride isn't edible. She grabbed the phone with shaking fingers, unlocked it, and opened her cousin's chat. The light burned her eyes after so much darkness. She blinked it away and started typing. "Can you please loan me $50 for baby formula? Erin hasn't eaten properly since morning. I get paid Friday. I swear I'll pay you back. I'm really sorry to bother you again." Her thumb hovered over the send button. This felt like one more piece of dignity being peeled away. But Erin whimpered, a soft, heartbreaking sound that cut deeper than any insult. Leora hit send. The message left with a whoosh and a tiny vibration. She didn't double-check the number, didn't even look at the name. Her eyes were too full of water and her heart too full of panic. She just locked the phone, pressed her forehead to her knees, and wrapped both arms around her crying child as if she could shield him from the universe's indifference. Minutes crawled, no reply. The candle burned lower, the cold pressed harder. Then, in the quiet of the hunger-filled room, her phone buzzed. Once, Leora's head snapped up. She grabbed the phone and flipped it over. A reply, but not from her cousin. Unknown number. "Is your baby okay right now?" Her stomach dropped. Wrong number. She hadn't texted family. She'd texted a stranger. Hundreds of meters above Leora's cold kitchen, the city looked almost peaceful. From the top floor of a glass tower, the streets below turned into lines of light and moving dots. Traffic hummed like distant waves. Neon bled into the night. People became patterns. In that silent height, behind tall windows and softer darkness, Cale Soren sat alone. The world called him many things: tech visionary, disruptor, tycoon. Some whispered other words: shark, machine, myth. From here, everything felt small, except the emptiness. He leaned back in a leather chair that had cost more than Leora's yearly rent. It did nothing to comfort him. A half-drunk coffee sat cold beside blueprints and reports. His second phone lay face down. His public device, the one assistants touched, filtered, watched. The phone in his hand was different, private, old, a number almost no one had. Once upon a time, this phone had buzzed constantly. Brother, mother, a few friends. Then the company consumed his hours. Then the accident consumed his brother. Then silence consumed everything else. So when it vibrated tonight, Cale almost thought he'd imagined it. But there it was, one message, a simple preview on the lock screen. I need $50 for baby formula. He frowned, thumb unlocking the device. The full text bloomed onto the screen. Can you please loan me $50 for baby formula? Aaron hasn't eaten properly since morning. I get paid Friday. I swear I'll pay you back. I'm really sorry to bother you again. No emojis, no weird links, no fake Dear Sir formatting. Just raw words. He read it again, slower this time. Aaron. The name stuck in his mind like a shard. He could almost hear the echo of a different name, a different child, a different night, when he'd once sat on a floor that wasn't heated and stared at an empty cupboard that didn't care. There had been a baby then, too. Not his, but close enough that the sound of that child's hunger burned into him. Someone had helped him back then. An old landlord who didn't evict them when the rent was late, who left groceries at their door without signing the note. Kyle had built an empire on that second chance, on that small act of mercy the world never saw. He stared at the screen. He should ignore this. Probably wrong number, probably someone else's responsibility. The city outside glittered like a field of coins. Down there, millions of people had problems he would never see. You can't save everyone. Every book, every advisor, every therapist had told him that. But this wasn't everyone. This was one person. One mother. One baby. He imagined a dark, tiny apartment somewhere below. Heat turned off, formula tin empty, a woman trying to stretch nothing further than it could go. He imagined the way hunger makes time slow, how a single hour can feel like an accusation. His chest tightened. Cale lifted the phone and typed slowly, each word precise. Is your baby okay right now? He hovered over the send button. This was insane. He didn't know this woman, didn't know if the story was true, didn't know what this could lead to, but he knew the sound of hunger. He hit send. The message went out into the city, through towers, signals, invisible waves, until it found its way back into that cold kitchen where Leora sat, thinking no one cared. His phone buzzed. Her answer arrived, and the decision he was about to make would cost him millions, rewrite his priorities, and completely alter everything he thought he knew about power. The message on the screen blurred as tears rushed back into Leora's eyes. Is your baby okay right now? Not. Who is this? Not. Wrong number. Not. Stop bothering people. She hadn't realized how used she'd become to being dismissed until a stranger's concern felt almost unreal. Aaron's crying had softened into hoarse, hitching whimpers. He was tired of asking for what his body needed and not receiving it. His little chest rose and fell against her arm as she held him tighter, the way someone might hold a breaking object. Her first instinct was fear. Why would a stranger ask about her baby? Oh, what did he want? What did anyone ever want? Her thumbs moved quickly. I'm sorry. Wrong number. Please ignore. She hit send before she could overthink. The embarrassment crawled up her spine. Somewhere out there, a man, she guessed from the tone, was reading her desperation like a sad, pathetic novel he hadn't asked to open. Aaron whined. She kissed the top of his head. I'll figure it out, she whispered. Mama always figures something out, right? Her words didn't convince even her. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I can help. No strings. Leora's breath caught. Help. That word had been poisoned in her world. Help meant you owe me. You'll regret this later. What will you give in return? Her jaw clenched. Thank you, but no, she typed. I don't take money from strangers. She hesitated, then added, It was a mistake. I'm sorry for bothering you. She sent it, heart pounding. Seconds passed. Then, smart policy. I respect it. Another bubble appeared before she could exhale. My name is Kyle. Not a stranger anymore. The way it was phrased made her pause. No pressure, no guilt, no come on, trust me. Just a name, dropped in like a hand held out across a river. Leora stared at the empty formula tin, at the cracked ceiling, at Aaron's tired face. 5 more hours until morning. 4 more days until payday. Simmers. Pride had done nothing to earn them warmth. Her caution had never once fed her son. Her fingers shook as she opened her banking app. Balance. Almost nothing. Overdraft warning, flashing red. She copied her transfer handle. Her thumb hovered. If this is a scam, she whispered, you can't take what I don't have anyway. She pasted it and sent. No explanation. No please, no thank you. She barely breathed as the message flew. Almost instantly, the phone buzzed again. Her notification banner lit up. Incoming transfer. $5,000. For a moment, her brain refused to process the zeros. She opened the app. There it was. Real. Present. Larger than anything she'd seen in that account in years. Her vision tunneled. A sound came out of her mouth. Half sob, half laugh. Her whole body shook. Aaron, she choked, pressing her face into his hair. Aaron, baby, you're going to eat. You're going to eat. Tears fell freely now. She typed with wet fingers. I only needed $50. 3 dots appeared. It's already yours. No catch. One less thing to worry about. She blinked, crying harder. She hadn't cried when they cut the power. She hadn't cried when her last job texted position terminated. She hadn't cried when Aaron's father disappeared after the first ultrasound. But this broke her. Her phone buzzed again. She expected instructions. A condition. A demand. Instead, she saw, just take care of Aaron. Her stomach flipped. He'd written her son's name. She stayed awake for a long time after Aaron finally fell asleep, full from the bottle she managed to buy. Her screen lit up one more time. Sleep. Tomorrow, we talk. She stared at those words. Tomorrow. Talk. What would tomorrow bring? Morning didn't feel like morning. It felt like stepping onto the edge of a cliff. Leora woke to a silence she wasn't used to. No screams of hunger, no shivers from cold. The thin curtains glowed faintly with daylight. For half a second, she forgot everything and felt peace. Then memory slammed back into her. The messages, the money, the tomorrow, we talk. She reached for her phone. One new notification. Kyle, if you're willing, come to this address at 10 a.m. Bring Aaron. If you're not comfortable, ignore this. The money stays yours either way. Below the message was an address. She copied it into her Maps app and almost dropped the phone. The building's photo appeared. Sleek glass, polished stone, logo she'd seen once on a tech article she'd read in a waiting room. It didn't look like somewhere a person like her could just walk into and say hi. She checked the time. 8:04 a.m. Her heart beat faster. She could stay here. Buy formula, pay a month's rent, pretend the miracle was a glitch in the universe, and live cautiously until the money dwindled. Or she could go and step into whatever this was. Aaron? She whispered, glancing at the sleeping baby beside her. He'd rolled slightly onto his side, cheek soft, lips parted, full for once. You changed our life while you were crying last night, she murmured. By 9:15, she had washed and dressed in her cleanest clothes, a faded blouse and black pants that had once been office wear 4 jobs ago. She wrapped Aaron in the least torn blanket, tucked him into a stroller with a squeaky wheel, and tried to steady her breathing. Every step to the bus stop felt like moving through thick water. What if it was dangerous? What if he was some kind of predator? What if this was all a trap? But predators don't usually send $5,000 with no catch. They take, not give. Her bus ride felt unreal. Dirty seats, advertisements peeling on the walls, people scrolling on phones and not knowing she'd been handed more money than most of them would see in a month overnight. The building appeared before her long before she reached it. Tall, reflective, expensive in the way that didn't need logos to prove anything. She swallowed hard at the revolving doors. The security guard's eyes scanned her quickly. Second-hand clothes, tired eyes, stroller. A flicker of confusion passed over his face. She looked like she'd gotten off on the wrong stop, like she was meant to be at a clinic or social office, not the headquarters of a firm whose name she'd only seen on screens. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I'm here to see someone." Her voice nearly failed. "His name is Cale. He sent me this address." She held out her phone with the message. The guard's eyebrows lifted slightly when he saw the name. He picked up his desk phone, spoke quietly into it, listened, then hung up. "You're cleared," he said, standing. "Top floor. Someone will meet you when the elevator opens." Top floor, of course. Inside the elevator, mirrors reflected her from all sides. She saw the dark circles under her eyes, the way her fingers tightened on the stroller handle, the cheap fabric of her clothes next to brushed metal panels. She could hit G and leave. No one would blame her. But Aaron stirred and made a tiny noise of contentment, as if reminding her why she'd come this far. The doors slid open with a ding. A hallway. Quiet. Soft lit, lined with art that looked too simple to be cheap. At the end of it stood a man. No bodyguards, no assistant, no crowd. Just one figure in a dark shirt with sleeves rolled to his forearms, holding 2 paper cups. He didn't look like a monster. He didn't look like an angel. He looked tired. Human. Real. Their eyes met. "You must be Leora," he said, voice calm, low, almost careful. "And this is Arin." He said her son's name like it mattered. She nodded, throat too tight to speak. "I'm glad you came." The office felt like a different planet. Soft chairs. A wall-sized window with a view of the city she'd only seen in movies. Bookshelves filled with titles she'd never heard of. Some spines cracked, some pristine. A plant in the corner that looked so healthy it made her own window plants at home feel like accusations. Cale didn't sit behind the massive desk. He sat across from Leora, chair angled toward her, not the skyline. The stroller was parked between them like a fragile bridge. For a few minutes, he didn't say anything. He just listened. Leora found herself talking more than she intended. About the layoffs. About the diner job that wouldn't let her bring Aaron to the back room when childcare gently against her forehead. "I've been working for a billionaire," she whispered into the darkness, as if saying it aloud might make it feel less ridiculous. But the absurdity didn't come. Only something else. A strange, low hum in her chest. Not fear, not awe. Something like responsibility. Because if someone with that kind of weight in the world had chosen to believe in her, she couldn't afford to keep seeing herself through the lens of every rejection and every failure. The next morning, she walked into the building with her shoulders a little straighter. When Call caught her eye in the hallway, something in his expression tightened. A tiny flicker, gone almost instantly. She wondered if he knew she knew. Later, in a meeting, when executives started praising internal systems and risk management, Kyle interrupted. "You're missing the point," he said, motioning toward her. "We got comfortable, she didn't. That's why she saw what you didn't." Afterward, she caught him alone for a moment by the elevator. "I Googled you," she said bluntly, because subtlety felt pointless. He huffed a soft laugh. "I assumed you would eventually." "You're not just rich," she said. "You're that rich." "Does it change how you see the work?" he asked. She thought about it. "No," she said slowly. "But it changes how I see what you did that first night." He tilted his head, studying her. "Most people treat it like a miracle when someone with money bothers to look down," she continued, voice quiet but steady. But now I know. You know what it feels like to be down there. You didn't throw money at me because you're generous. You did it because you remember." He held her gaze, something raw flickering in his eyes. "That's more accurate than most interviews," he admitted. She took a breath. "I won't waste what you gave me," she said. "The money, the job, the chance." She hesitated. "But I'm not going to worship you either." A real smile touched his mouth this time. Smaller, looser. "Good," he said. "The last thing I need is more people who think I'm untouchable." The elevator doors opened behind him. As they closed with him inside, she saw his reflection in the mirrored panel. A man who could buy buildings but still looked like someone carrying invisible weight. Back at her desk, she opened a blank document and started outlining ways to strengthen the company's audit process so no one could ever slip money out the way Rogan had again. She worked late. The city outside glittered as usual. But for the first time in a long time, Leora didn't feel like she was on the outside of that light, nose pressed to a window. She was inside something now. Not just a job, not just a company, a story, one she had a say in shaping. 1 year later, the apartment looked different. The cracked window had been replaced. The couch wasn't sinking in the middle anymore. A small bookshelf stood by the wall, filled with secondhand business books and children's stories. A potted plant sat on the sill, green and stubborn, soaking up sunlight. Aaron, now wobbling unsteadily on chubby legs, tottered after a toy car, laughing as it bumped into the baseboard. Leora watched him for a moment, letting the sound fill her. Her phone buzzed. A calendar reminder. Foundation launch. 1 hour. Speech. Don't forget to breathe. She smiled. Her reflection in the mirror still startled her sometimes. Tailored blazer. Not designer, but well-fitted. Simple jewelry. Hair pulled back neatly. The tiredness in her eyes had been replaced by something else. Focus. Purpose. A quiet fire. She lifted Aaron into her arms. "Ready to see Mama talk in front of too many people?" she teased. He patted her cheek as if approving. The ride to the new building, the one that housed the ethical oversight and social initiatives arm of Kale's empire, felt faster these days. Familiar. Not because she'd gotten used to luxury, but because she'd gotten used to belonging in rooms she once would have cleaned, not spoken in. The event hall buzzed. Cameras, reporters, employees, partners. A large banner bore the name of the foundation she now co-directed, focused on preventing financial exploitation in vulnerable communities. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd once prayed for $50. Now she signed off on grants that saved families from traps she knew too well. Backstage, Kyle adjusted his cufflinks, expression calm as always. He caught sight of her and Aaron, and his posture softened, almost imperceptibly. "Big day," he said. "For you," she replied. "Huh, for us," he corrected. A year had changed him too. He took more pauses now, left the office before midnight sometimes, spent time in places that didn't have glass walls. He still carried grief like a shadow, but it no longer swallowed all his light. "Whatever happens today," he added, "remember this. None of this exists without you raising your hand that day and walking into my office with a folder nobody else wanted to see." She shook her head. "You're exaggerating." "I'm not," he said simply. They stepped onto the stage to the muted roar of applause. Speeches were given, numbers were shared, plans outlined. Then it was her turn. Leora stood at the podium, lights washing over her, the crowd blurring into a soft, shifting sea. She spotted Aaron in the front row, perched on a volunteer's lap, chewing on a soft toy, eyes vaguely pointed in her direction. She took a breath. 412 nights ago, she said, voice carrying through the room. I sat on a kitchen floor in an apartment that was colder inside than it was outside. The crowd quieted. I had an empty formula tin, a crying baby, and $32 to last me a week. So I did something I swore I'd never do again. I asked for help. She told the story. Not glamorized, not sanitized. The wrong number. The stranger's reply. The $5,000. The job offer. The discovery. The betrayal exposed, not as a fairy tale, as a chain of ordinary choices that added up to something extraordinary. People have asked me if this is some kind of Cinderella story, she said, a faint smile in her voice. As if kindness turned a pumpkin into a carriage, and suddenly everything was fine. Her gaze swept the room. This isn't a fairy tale, she said. It's a reminder that sometimes the difference between collapse and survival is $50. That sometimes the person who needs help most is also the person who can see what others ignore. That sometimes the biggest change doesn't come from the top or the bottom, but from a bridge built between both. She glanced sideways at Cale. We're not here today because a billionaire rescued a poor woman. We're here because two people remembered what hunger felt like and decided no one else should have to feel it alone. When she finished, the applause didn't feel like noise. It felt like a chorus to a song she'd thought no one else would ever hear. Later, as the crowd dispersed and cameras were packed away, she and Cole stood by the large window overlooking the city. The same city that had felt so cold a year ago now glittered with a different kind of light. Do you ever think about that first message? She asked softly. All the time, he replied. One wrong digit. Or the right one, she countered. They stood in companionable silence for a moment. Then he said something that made her pulse quicken. This is just the beginning, he murmured. We've disrupted one pattern. There are 1,000 more out there. She looked at him, sensing something in his tone. What are you planning? She asked. He smiled, that small, knowing smile she'd come to recognize as a storm warning. There's a system, he said slowly, eyes still on the city. Bigger than one company. Bigger than one foundation. It's been running for decades, quietly draining people who can't afford lawyers, who can't afford to fight back. Her stomach tightened. Payday loans? She guessed. Among other things, he confirmed, medical debt bundling, predatory insurance clauses, legal fees designed to bury the poor. He turned to face her fully. I want to build something that doesn't just help people after they fall. I want to catch them before the trap even closes. His voice dropped. But it's going to make enemies, powerful ones, people who profit from desperation. Leora's breath caught. You're talking about going to war, she said. I'm talking about leveling a playing field, he corrected. But yes, it will feel like war. He studied her face carefully. I need to know if you're willing to stand in that fire with me. Because once we start, there's no walking it back. They'll come after the foundation, after the company, after anyone close to this. She thought of Aaron, safe and fed and laughing. She thought of the nights she'd spent hungry, powerless, invisible. She thought of every person sitting in a cold apartment right now, staring at an empty account, wondering if anyone cared. When do we start? She asked. Cale's eyes lit with something she'd never seen before. Relief. Respect. Maybe even hope. Next week, he said. There's a congressional hearing on financial reform. They've invited me to testify. He paused. I want you there with me. Not as my employee, as my partner in this. Her heart hammered. They're going to ask why a billionaire suddenly cares about poor people, she said. Let them ask, he replied. And then, you tell them. You tell them what it's like to beg a stranger for $50, to water down formula because there's nothing left, to choose between heat and food. His voice hardened. You tell them the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed, and we're here to break it. Leora looked out at the city again. Somewhere down there, in apartments and shelters and cars, people were making the same impossible choices she'd once made. Somewhere, a mother was holding a hungry baby and wondering if anyone would hear her cry for help. "They need to know they're not alone," she whispered. "Exactly," Cale said. She turned back to him. "I'm in," she said firmly. "Whatever it takes." He extended his hand. Not a handshake between boss and employee, a pact between equals. She took it. "Then let's give them something to be afraid of," he said. As they stood there, hands clasped, the city below continued its endless dance of light and shadow. But somewhere in the machinery of power, in boardrooms and lobbyist offices and political backrooms, a shift was beginning. Two people who'd once been strangers connected by a wrong number were about to become the most dangerous partnership the system had ever faced, and the people who'd grown rich on desperation? They had no idea what was coming. The hearing room felt like a cathedral built for judgment. High ceilings, dark wood paneling, rows of seats filled with journalists, lobbyists, and faces Leora recognized from news channels. The air smelled like old carpet and expensive cologne. At the front, behind an elevated bench, sat 12 members of the Financial Oversight Committee. Some looked bored, some looked curious. A few looked openly hostile. Leora sat beside Cale at a simple table facing them, a microphone between them like a weapon they'd been handed. Her hands were steady, but her pulse wasn't. She'd worn her best suit, the one Kyle's assistant had helped her pick out, insisting it wasn't charity, but strategy. "You're representing millions of people who look like you used to," the assistant had said. "Let them see that." Cale leaned slightly toward her. "Remember," he whispered, "they'll try to make you small. Don't let them." The committee chair, a man with silver hair and a practiced smile, banged his gavel. "This hearing will come to order. We're here today to discuss proposed reforms to consumer lending practices. Our first witness is Kyle Soren, founder and CEO of Soren Industries." He glanced at Leora with barely concealed confusion. "And his associate?" Coyle's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Her name is Leora Kane," he said into the microphone. "She's the co-director of our financial justice initiative, and she's here because she's lived what we're about to discuss." A murmur rippled through the room. The chairman's smile thinned. "Very well. Mr. Soren, you've submitted a proposal that would cap interest rates on short-term loans, restrict medical debt collection practices, and require transparent fee disclosure. That's a bold agenda." "It's a necessary one," Cale replied. A woman halfway down the bench leaned forward. Councilwoman Vera. Leora recognized her from the briefing packet, known for taking donations from payday loan companies. "Mr. Soren," Vera said, voice dripping with false sweetness, "you're worth billions. You live in a world most Americans can't even imagine. What makes you think you understand the financial struggles of everyday people?" Kyle didn't flinch. "I don't," he said simply. "That's why she's here." He gestured to Leora. Every eye in the room turned. Leora's throat went dry. This was it. The moment she either found her voice or disappeared forever. She leaned toward the microphone. "2 years ago," she began, and her voice cracked slightly. She cleared her throat. Tried again. "2 years ago, I sat on a kitchen floor in an apartment that was colder inside than it was outside." The room went silent. "I had $32, she continued, voice growing stronger, "and 4 days until payday. The formula was gone. The heat was off. I'd already sold everything I could sell." She looked directly at Councilwoman Vera. "So, I did what your system tells desperate people to do. I asked for help." Vera's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. "I sent a message begging for $50, Leora said. By accident, it went to him." She nodded toward Kyle. "He sent me 5,000. No interest. No trap. No contract designed to bury me deeper." She paused, letting that sink in. Do you know what the difference is between what he did and what your donors do? Vera's lips pressed into a thin line. He saw a human being, Leora said quietly. They see profit. A camera flashed somewhere in the back. The companies you protect don't offer help, Leora continued, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. They offer bait. A 2-week loan at 400% interest. Medical payment plans that double the debt. Fees buried in fine. Print that people like me don't have time to read because we're working 3 jobs just to stay afloat. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. You want to know why a billionaire cares? She asked. Because he remembers being one wrong bill away from homelessness. Because he knows the system isn't designed to help people climb. It's designed to keep them drowning. She leaned back slightly, heart pounding. We're not here to ask for permission, she said. We're here to tell you what's coming, with or without you. The room erupted. Order, the chairman barked, slamming his gavel repeatedly. Order in this chamber. The noise gradually died to a tense hum. Vera leaned into her microphone, voice cold and sharp. Ms. Kane, she said, your story is she said. We're here to tell you what's coming, with or without you. The room erupted. Order, the chairman barked, slamming his gavel repeatedly. Order in this chamber. The noise gradually died to a tense hum. Vera leaned into her microphone, voice cold and sharp. Ms. Kane, she said, your story is touching. Truly. But personal anecdotes don't make policy. The lending industry provides essential services to millions of Americans who have nowhere else to turn. Leora didn't blink. Essential? She repeated. Is it essential to charge someone 300% interest on a $200 loan? Is it essential to threaten wage garnishment on medical bills for a sick child? Vera's smile was thin as paper. Those are choices, Ms. Kane. No one forces anyone to take a loan. You're right, Leora said, and her voice dropped to something quieter, more dangerous. No one forced me. They just made sure I had no other choice. She pulled a folder from her bag, the same way she'd done with Cale a year ago. Some gestures she'd learned had power in repetition. I brought something, she said, sliding papers toward the microphone. 347 testimonies, collected over 6 months. People who took payday loans because their car broke down and they'd lose their job without it. Parents who signed predatory medical payment plans because their child needed surgery and the hospital wouldn't operate without a signature. She looked directly at Vera. Every single one of them paid back more than double what they borrowed. Some are still paying. Years later, a different committee member spoke up. Younger, sharper eyes, Congressman Lind. Ms. Kane, what you're describing sounds like fraud. If these practices are illegal, why haven't they been prosecuted? Cale answered this time. Because they're not illegal, he said. They're designed to look legal. Buried in terms of service, hidden in fee schedules, structured just carefully enough to pass regulatory review. He tapped the table once. The system protects itself. Lynn's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. And you're proposing to dismantle it. We're proposing accountability, Kyle corrected. Transparency. Limits that actually protect people instead of corporations. Vera cut back in, voice rising. This is government overreach. You'd destroy an entire industry. Put thousands out of work. Good, Leora said. The word landed like a stone in still water. Vera's mouth opened, then closed. If an industry only survives by trapping desperate people, Leora continued, voice steady as steel, then it deserves to die. The room erupted again. This time the chairman didn't bother trying to restore order immediately. He just watched, eyes calculating, as cameras captured every second. Leora felt Cale's hand brush hers under the table. Not a grip. just a touch, a reminder. You're not alone. When the chaos finally settled, Lind spoke again. "I'd like to submit Ms. Kane's testimonies into the official record," he said, "and I move that we extend this hearing to include witnesses from the affected communities." Vira's face went pale. "That's irregular," she protested. "So is ignoring 347 voices," Lynn shot back. The vote was called, 8-4. The hearing would continue. As they left the building an hour later, reporters swarmed. Microphones thrust forward like weapons. Questions overlapped into noise. Kyle's security created a path, but one reporter broke through. "Ms. Kane, do you really think one hearing can change anything?" Leora paused. She thought of that cold kitchen floor, of Aaron's cries, of every desperate parent sitting in a similar darkness right now. "No," she said honestly. "One hearing won't change anything." She looked directly into the camera. But one hearing becomes two. Two becomes 10. 10 becomes a movement. And movements break systems that were built to never break. She stepped into the car. As they pulled away, Cale exhaled slowly. "You just declared war on a $50 billion industry," he said. "We," she corrected. "We declared war," he smiled. "Yes, we did." Leora looked out the window at the city rushing past. Somewhere in those buildings, in boardrooms she'd never see, people were already making calls, hiring lawyers, preparing counterattacks. Let them come. She'd survived worse than rich people's anger. She'd survived hunger. The backlash came faster than expected. Within 48 hours, the testimonies Leora had submitted were being dissected on every news channel. Her face, frozen mid-speech, appeared on screens across the country. Some called her brave. Others called her a pawn. The attack started small, anonymous comments on articles, claims that her story was exaggerated, that she was being paid to lie. Then they grew teeth. A think tank funded by lending companies released a report questioning her credibility. They dug up her eviction notice from 3 years ago, her unfinished nursing degree, her fired employment records. Leora Kane, the face of financial reform or a professional victim, one headline read. She sat in her apartment, scrolling through the articles with numb fingers. Aaron played on the floor nearby, oblivious to the fact that his mother's past was being weaponized on national television. Her phone buzzed. "Cale, don't read them," he said the moment she answered. "Too late." A pause. "Where are you?" "Home." "I'm sending a car." "Cale, I don't need—" "They're going to get worse," he interrupted, voice firm. "And you're not facing this alone." 20 minutes later, she was back in his office. The same space where she'd first brought him proof of theft, where he'd offered her a job, where everything had started to shift. He sat across from her, not behind the desk. Always across, never above. "They're doing exactly what I expected," he said, "discrediting you before your voice gets too loud." "It's working," she said quietly. "People are starting to believe them." "Some people," he corrected, "but not the ones who matter." He turned his laptop towards her. The screen showed a different kind of headline. "Thousands rally behind Leora Kane after testimony goes viral." Another tab. "GoFundMe started for families to attend congressional hearings. Raises $2 million in one day." Another. "Former payday loan victims organized national protest." Leora's breath caught. "You're not alone in this," Cale said. "You gave people language for their pain. Now they're using it." Her eyes stung. "What if I mess this up?" she whispered. "What if I say the wrong thing and it all falls apart?" Kyle leaned forward. "Then you'll say the wrong thing," he said simply, "and we'll fix it. But you don't get to disappear because someone with money decided to throw dirt." He held her gaze. "You survived worse than bad press, Leora. You survived a system designed to erase you. They're scared because you're still here. Still talking. Still breathing." A knock at the door in Tur. The explosion of voices hit like a wave. Reporters shouted questions. Committee members banged gavels. Cameras clicked in rapid succession, flashes popping like small lightning strikes. Councilwoman Vieira's face had gone rigid, a mask barely holding back fury. "Order!" the chairman barked, slamming his gavel repeatedly. "Order in this chamber." The noise gradually died to a tense hum. Vera leaned into her microphone, voice cold and sharp. "Ms. Kane," she said, "your story is touching. Truly. But personal anecdotes don't make policy. The lending industry provides essential services to millions of Americans who have nowhere else to turn." Leora didn't blink. "Essential?" she repeated. "Is it essential to charge someone 300% interest on a $200 loan? Is it essential to threaten wage garnishment on medical bills for a sick child?" Vera's smile was thin as paper. "Those are choices, Ms. Kane. No one forces anyone to take a loan." "You're right," Leora said, and her voice dropped to something quieter, more dangerous. "No one forced me. They just made sure I had no other choice." She pulled a folder from her bag, the same way she'd done with Kyle a year ago. Some gestures she'd learned had power in repetition. "I brought something," she said, sliding papers toward the microphone. 347 testimonies, collected over 6 months. People who took payday loans because their car broke down and they'd lose their job without it. Parents who signed predatory medical payment plans because their child needed surgery and the hospital wouldn't operate without a signature. She looked directly at Vera. Every single one of them paid back more than double what they borrowed. Some are still paying. Years later, a different committee member spoke up. Younger, sharper eyes, Congressman Lind. "Ms. Kane, what you're describing sounds like fraud. If these practices are illegal, why haven't they been prosecuted?" Cale answered this time. "Because they're not illegal," he said. "They're designed to look legal. Buried in terms of service, hidden in fee schedules, structured just carefully enough to pass regulatory review." He tapped the table once. "The system protects itself." Lynn's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "And you're proposing to dismantle it?" "We're proposing accountability," Kyle corrected. "Transparency. Limits that actually protect people instead of corporations." Vera cut back in, voice rising. "This is government overreach. You'd destroy an entire industry. Put thousands out of work." "Good," Leora said. The word landed like a stone in still water. Vera's mouth opened, then closed. "If an industry only survives by trapping desperate people," Leora continued, voice steady as steel, "then it deserves to die." The room erupted again. This time the chairman didn't bother trying to restore order immediately. He just watched, eyes calculating, as cameras captured every second. Leora felt Cale's hand brush hers under the table. Not a grip, just a touch. A reminder. You're not alone. When the chaos finally settled, Lynn spoke again. "I'd like to submit Ms. Kane's testimonies into the official record," he said. "And I move that we extend this hearing to include witnesses from the affected communities." Vera's face went pale. "That's irregular," she protested. "So is ignoring 347 voices," Lynn shot back. The vote was called. 8-4. The hearing would continue. As they left the building an hour later, reporters swarmed. Microphones thrust forward like weapons. Questions overlapped into noise. Kyle's security created a path. But one reporter broke through. "Ms. Kane, do you really think one hearing can change anything?" Leora paused. She thought of that cold kitchen floor, of Aaron's cries, of every desperate parent sitting in a similar darkness, right now. "No," she said honestly. "One hearing won't change anything." She looked directly into the camera. But one hearing becomes two. Two becomes 10. 10 becomes a movement. And movements break systems that were built to never break. She stepped into the car. As they pulled away, Cale exhaled slowly. "You just declared war on a $50 billion industry," he said. "We," she corrected. "We declared war." He smiled. "Yes, we did." Leora looked out the window at the city rushing past. Somewhere in those buildings, in boardrooms she'd never see, people were already making calls, hiring lawyers, preparing counterattacks. Let them come. She'd survived worse than rich people. The backlash came faster than expected. Within 48 hours, the testimonies Leora had submitted were being dissected on every news channel. Her face, frozen mid-speech, appeared on screens across the country. Some called her brave. Others called her a pawn. The attack started small. Anonymous comments on articles, claims that her story was exaggerated, that she was being paid to lie. Then they grew teeth. A think tank funded by lending companies released a report questioning her credibility. They dug up her eviction notice from 3 years ago, her unfinished nursing degree, her fired employment records. Leora Kane, the face of financial reform or a professional victim, one headline read. She sat in her apartment, scrolling through the articles with numb fingers. Aaron played on the floor nearby, oblivious to the fact that his mother's past was being weaponized on national television. Her phone buzzed. "Kyle." "Don't read them," he said the moment she answered. Too late. A pause. "Where are you?" "Home. I'm sending a car." "Kyle, I don't need—" "They're going to get worse," he interrupted, voice firm. "And you're not facing this alone." 20 minutes later, she was back in his office, the same space where she'd first brought him proof of theft, where he'd offered her a job, where everything had started to shift. He sat across from her, not behind the desk. Always across, never above. "They're doing exactly what I expected," he said, "discrediting you before your voice gets too loud." "It's working," she said quietly. "People are starting to believe them." "Some people," he corrected, "but not the ones who matter." He turned his laptop toward her. The screen showed a different kind of headline. "Thousands rally behind Leora Kane after testimony goes viral." Another tab. "GoFundMe started for families to attend congressional hearings, raises $2 million in one day." Another. "Former payday loan victims organize national protest." Leora's breath caught. "You're not alone in this," Kyle said. "You gave people language for their pain. Now they're using it." Her eyes stung. "What if I mess this up?" she whispered. "What if I say the wrong thing and it all falls apart?" Cale leaned forward. "Then you'll say the wrong thing," he said simply. "And we'll fix it. But you don't get to disappear because someone with money decided to throw dirt." He held her gaze. "You survived worse than bad press, Leora. You survived a system designed to erase you. They're scared because you're still here. Still talking. Still breathing." A knock at the door interrupted them. Cale's assistant stepped in, face pale. "Sir, we have a problem." Cale's expression hardened. "What kind?" "Legal. 3 payday loan companies just filed a joint lawsuit. They're claiming defamation and demanding the foundation's financial records be made public." Leora's stomach dropped. "They're trying to expose our donors," Cale said quietly. "Scare them off." The assistant nodded. "And there's more. Someone leaked your personal address online. We're seeing threats." The room tilted. Threats. Against her. Against Aaron. Kyle stood immediately. "Get her security." heavy, cold. We go after the child. Not physically, not directly. But Child Protective Services could be called. Anonymous tips about an unfit mother, a woman who'd been evicted, fired, unstable, living in hiding, dragging her son into danger. They'd take Erin, temporarily, of course, just long enough to break her. The vote was unanimous. And the next morning, when Leora opened her door to take Aaron to his checkup, 2 CPS workers stood waiting with official paperwork and expressionless faces. "Ms. Kane, we need to talk about your son's living conditions." The world tilted. Everything she'd fought for, everything she'd risked, and now they were coming for the one thing that mattered more than all of it: her baby. Leora's hands shook as she pulled Erin closer. "No," she whispered, but the workers stepped forward anyway. "Ma'am, please don't make this difficult." Behind them, a black car idled at the curb, waiting. And in that moment, Leora understood the real price of fighting power. They don't just come for you. They come for everything you love. Time stopped. Leora held Erin tighter, his small body warm against hers. He looked up at her, confused by the tension, by the strangers at the door. "Mama," he said softly. The word broke something in her chest. "You can't take him," Leora said, voice shaking but firm. "I haven't done anything wrong." The female CPS worker's face was professional, almost sympathetic. Almost. "We received reports of unstable living conditions, frequent moves, potential danger due to recent threats against you." "Reports from who?" Leora demanded. "Anonymous. But we're required to investigate." The male worker pulled out a tablet. "We have documentation of your eviction history, job instability, and recent evidence you're living in an undisclosed location, possibly hiding from law enforcement." "I'm hiding from people trying to intimidate me," Leora shot back. "There's a difference." "We understand. This is difficult," the woman said, "but we need to ensure your son's safety. This is temporary, just until we complete our assessment." Leora's mind raced. They'd planned this perfectly. Timed it when Coyle wasn't here, when she was alone, when refusing would make her look exactly like the unfit mother they were pretending to investigate. Her phone was in her pocket. "I need to make a call," she said. "After we've secured the child," the male worker said, reaching forward. "Don't touch him," Leora snapped, stepping back. Erin started to cry, sensing her fear. The workers exchanged a glance. "Ms. Kane, you're making this worse for yourself. If you refuse to cooperate," "She's not refusing anything." The voice came from behind the workers. Cale appeared at the top of the stairs, followed by 2 lawyers and a woman Leora didn't recognize. The workers turned, startled. "Mr. Soren," the female worker said, recovering quickly. "This is a Child Protective Services matter. It concerns me when fraudulent reports are filed to intimidate a witness in a federal investigation." Cale interrupted, voice ice cold. He nodded to one of the lawyers. "We've already filed an emergency injunction blocking this removal. Judge Carver signed it 20 minutes ago." The lawyer stepped forward, handing papers to the stunned workers. "Additionally," the woman with them said, "I'm Dr. Sana Okafor, child welfare advocate. I've been monitoring Ms. Kane's care of her son for 3 weeks as part of the Foundation's family support program. I can testify that Aaron is thriving, well-fed, well cared for, living in temporary secure housing due to documented threats." She pulled out her own tablet. "I have medical records, daycare reports, weekly evaluations, all showing a healthy, loved child." The male worker's jaw tightened. "This is highly irregular." "So is weaponizing CPS to silence a whistleblower," Cale said quietly. "And when we find out who filed that anonymous report, and we will, they'll face federal charges for filing false claims." The workers looked at each other. They knew they'd lost. We'll need to verify these documents, the woman said stiffly. Take your time, Kyle replied. We're not going anywhere. The workers retreated down the stairs, muttering into their phones. The moment they were gone, Leora's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, still clutching Aaron, and broke. Sobs tore through her. Not from fear now, from rage, from exhaustion, from the sheer terror of how close she'd come to losing him. Cale knelt beside her. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have anticipated this. How did you know? She choked out. I've been tracking unusual CPS activity near any of our Foundation witnesses. When I saw the flag on your address, I moved. Dr. Okafor sat, down on her other side. You're an excellent mother, she said gently. Don't let them make you doubt that. Leora looked at Arin. His tears had stopped. He was patting her face clumsily, trying to comfort her the way she'd always comforted him. Mama okay? He whispered. She pulled him close. Yeah, baby. Mama's okay. But she wasn't. Not really. Because now she understood the true shape of this war. They'd go after her credibility, her past, her safety. And when none of that worked, they'd go after her child. Later, after Dr. Okafor left and Aaron was napping, Leora sat across from Kyle at the small table. I can't do this, she said quietly. Cale's expression didn't change. Yes, you can. They almost took him, Cale. My son. If you hadn't been there. But I was, he interrupted. And we have measures in place now. Legal protections, monitors. They can't try this again. They'll try something else, she said. They always do. He leaned forward. Then we end it. Fast. We take the documents Marcus gave us, the testimonies, everything, and we don't wait for slow legal processes. We go nuclear. What does that mean? It means, Cale said slowly, we release everything. Every document, every email, every name, to every major media outlet simultaneously. Create a firestorm so big they can't control it. His eyes hardened. They wanted a war. Let's give them one they can't win. Leora looked toward the room where Aaron slept. One path kept him safe, but left the system intact. The other risked everything, but might actually change things. She'd already made her choice the moment she'd refused their settlement. Do it, she said. Kyle nodded once. Then it's done. She asked a stranger for baby formula. She didn't know he was a billionaire. Chapter 18. The release happened at midnight. Coordinated, simultaneous, unstoppable. Every major news outlet received the same encrypted file. Thousands of pages. Emails, memos, recordings, names, amounts, dates. A decade of deliberate exploitation laid bare. By morning, the world was on fire. Headlines screamed across every platform. Payday loan giants caught targeting poor families. Internal docs reveal calculated cruelty. Executives celebrated trapping families in debt. Emails expose predatory culture. Federal investigation launched into lending industry after massive document leak. Leora woke to her phone vibrating nonstop. Messages from people she'd never met. Thank you. You saved my family. I thought I was alone. She scrolled through them with tears in her eyes. Aaron curled against her side, still sleeping peacefully. One message stood out. From Patricia, the woman who'd brought the sign. My daughter just called. She hasn't spoken to me in 2 years. She saw the news. She said she's proud of me. Thank you for giving me my family back. Leora pressed the phone to her chest and cried quietly. By noon, 3 CEOs had resigned. By evening, 2 congresspeople announced they'd return donations from payday loan companies. By midnight, the Department of Justice confirmed a federal investigation into industry practices. But it was the smaller moments that mattered most. A single mother in Ohio opened her mailbox to find a notice that her debt had been forgiven. An anonymous foundation had paid it off. A father in Texas received a call from his bank. The predatory loan that had haunted him for years was voided. Illegal contract terms. Across the country, families checked their accounts and found relief they'd stopped praying for. The foundation Coyle and Leora had built was moving fast, erasing debt, funding legal battles, helping people disappear from the system that had trapped them. One family at a time. But the cost was real. Leora couldn't leave the safe house. Threats continued, some credible enough that security stayed outside around the clock. Cale's company lost 3 major contracts, partners who didn't want the controversy, investors who valued stability over justice. He didn't flinch. Money comes back, he said simply. Integrity doesn't. 2 weeks after the release, Leora received a call from Congressman Lind. "We're fast-tracking the reform bill," he said. "It's going to pass. Your testimony, the documents, it changed everything." Leora closed her eyes. "How long until it's law?" 3 months. Maybe less. She exhaled slowly. 3 months, after years of suffering, after countless families destroyed. 3 months felt both impossibly long and miraculously fast. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me," Lind replied. "You did this. You and everyone brave enough to speak up." He paused. "History's going to remember you, Ms. Kane." She hung up and looked at Oren, who was trying to stack blocks on the floor, tongue sticking out in concentration. History didn't matter. This did. Her son. Safe. Fed. Loved. Growing up in a world that might actually be a little less cruel than the one she'd known. That night, Cale came by with takeout and exhaustion written across his face. They sat on the floor, backs against the couch, while Aaron slept in the next room. "We did it," Leora said quietly. "We did," Cale agreed. "What happens now?" He was quiet for a moment. "Now we make sure it sticks. Enforce the laws. Watch for loopholes. Keep fighting." He looked at her. "And you get to decide what you want your life to look like. You've earned that." Leora thought about the cold apartment, the empty formula tin, the desperate message to a wrong number, how impossibly far she'd come. "I want to keep going," she said. "There are other systems, other traps, other people who need someone to see them." Cale smiled, tired, but genuine. "Then we keep going." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights through the window. 2 people who'd met by accident, who'd chosen to fight when it would have been easier to look away, who'd learned that sometimes one wrong message sent to one right person can change everything. Outside, the world kept spinning, but inside this small, safe space, something else was growing. Hope. Not the naive kind that believes everything will be okay. The stubborn kind that fights until it is. And somewhere in the city, on a cold kitchen floor in an apartment that felt too much like the one Leora had escaped, another mother sat with a hungry baby and a dying phone. She typed a message, desperate and raw, and hit send, hoping someone, anyone, would care enough to answer. The message traveled through towers and signals, through the same invisible network that had once carried Leora's plea, and it landed in an inbox that now received thousands of messages a day. But this one was different, because Leora had built a system designed to catch people before they fell. A team monitored the Foundation's emergency line around the clock. Within minutes, the mother's message was flagged. Within an hour, help was on the way. Formula, groceries, rent assistance, job placement resources. Not a miracle. A system. Built by people who remembered what it felt like to be forgotten. And in that moment, the cycle that had once nearly destroyed Leora and countless others began to break. One message at a time. One family at a time. One choice at a time. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time in a long time, hope was winning. 6 months after the law passed, Leora stood in a place she never thought she'd return to. Her old apartment building, the one from the threatening photo. the one where she'd sat on that cold floor, where everything had started. But she wasn't here as a victim anymore. She was here to buy it. The landlord, an older man who'd raised rent every year without fixing anything, sat across from her in his cramped office, papers spread between them. "You're serious about this?" he asked, skeptical. "Completely," Leora said. Kyle stood behind her, silent support. The landlord squinted at the offer. "This is above market value." "I know," Leora replied, "because I'm not just buying the building. I'm buying every tenant's lease, and I'm forgiving all back rent and late fees." His eyes widened. "That's insane." "Maybe," she said. "But I lived here. I know what it's like to choose between heat and food, between rent and medicine." She slid the contract forward. "Sign it, or I'll find another building and these families will keep suffering under you." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he signed. 3 weeks later, Leora stood in the building's courtyard with every tenant gathered around her. Families she recognized, faces that had once looked at her with pity or judgment or indifference. Now they looked at her with confusion and hope. "Most of you don't know me," she began, "but I lived here. Unit 4B. 2 years ago, I sat on my kitchen floor in that apartment with my baby, wondering how we'd survive." She saw recognition flicker in some eyes. "I sent a message asking for $50. It went to the wrong person. And that mistake changed everything." She gestured to the building. "I just bought this place. Not to flip it. Not to raise rent. But to make sure no one here has to make the choices I made." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Effective immediately. Rent is reduced by 30%. All late fees are forgiven. Repairs will actually get done. And if you ever need help, really need it, there's a fund. For emergencies, for job loss, for medical bills." A woman in the back started crying. "Why?" someone called out. Leora met their eyes. "Because someone helped me when they didn't have to, and now I can do the same." She paused. "And because I need you to know something. You're not invisible. You're not forgotten. You matter." The courtyard erupted in applause, but one person stood frozen. A young woman, maybe 22, holding a baby. She looked exactly like Leora had 2 years ago. Tired, scared, barely holding on. After the crowd dispersed, the woman approached hesitantly. "Ms. Kane?" "Just Leora," she said gently. "I'm Sophia. I live in 4B now." Leora's breath caught. Her old apartment. "I heard your story on the news," Sophia continued, voice shaking. "I didn't believe it was. These are forgiven. Repairs will actually get done. And if you ever need help, really need it, there's a fund. For emergencies, for job loss, for medical bills." A woman in the back started crying. "Why?" someone called out. Leora met their eyes. "Because someone helped me when they didn't have to, and now I can do the same." She paused. "And because I need you to know something. You're not invisible. You're not forgotten. You matter." The courtyard erupted in applause, but one person stood frozen. A young woman, maybe 22, holding a baby. She looked exactly like Leora had 2 years ago. Tired, scared, barely holding on. After the crowd dispersed, the woman approached hesitantly. "Ms. Kane?" "Just Leora," she said gently. "I'm Sophia. I live in 4B now." Leora's breath caught. Her old apartment. "I heard your story on the news," Sophia continued, voice shaking. "I didn't believe it was real. That someone like you existed." She adjusted the baby on her hip. "I'm 3 months behind on rent. I lost my job. The formula's almost gone. I was going to ask the landlord for more time, but he always says no." Tears streamed down her face. "I don't know what to do." Leora felt time collapse. She was looking at herself, at the ghost of who she'd been. "What's your baby's name?" Leora asked softly. Luna. Leora smiled through her own tears. Sophia, you're not going to lose your home. Your rent is covered, and formula, groceries, whatever you need, it's handled. Sophia's legs buckled slightly. I can't pay you back. I don't want you to, Leora interrupted. I want you to breathe, to take care of Luna. And when you're stable, when you're strong, I want you to help someone else the way I'm helping you now. Sophia sobbed openly now, clutching her daughter. Why are you doing this? Leora thought of Cale answering a wrong number, of every person who'd stood up at hearings, of Patricia and her sign, of the mother somewhere right now typing a desperate message. Because kindness isn't a transaction, Leora said. It's a cycle. And I'm choosing to keep it, spinning. That night, back at her new apartment, the one with heat and light and space for Aaron to run, Leora sat with Cale on the balcony. You gave away a lot of money today, he observed. We gave away a lot of money, she corrected. Your foundation funded half of it, he smiled. Best investment I've ever made. They watched the city lights flicker like stars trapped on Earth. Do you ever think about that first message? She asked. What if you hadn't answered? Every day, he admitted. Everything would be different. For both of us, she added. He nodded. One message. One choice. One moment of deciding someone else's crisis mattered more than my convenience. He looked at her. That's all it takes to change a life. Leora leaned back, exhausted but content. Then let's keep changing them. Somewhere in the city, Sophia held Luna close and whispered promises she finally believed she could keep. Somewhere else, a family opened a letter saying their debt was forgiven. And somewhere, a mother about to give up found help arriving just in time. The cycle continued, spinning forward, carrying hope to places darkness had lived too long. 5 years after the message that changed everything, Leora stood on a stage she'd built herself. Not literally, but close enough. The annual Hope Foundation Gala filled a ballroom with faces she'd fought beside. Politicians who'd passed the reforms, journalists who'd broken the stories, families who'd survived because someone finally listened. And in the front row, Aaron sat beside Kyle, now 7 years old, swinging his legs and trying to sit still in his little suit. Leora's son didn't remember the cold apartment, didn't remember crying from hunger, didn't remember the night his mother had sent a desperate message with shaking fingers. He only knew the world they'd built after, and that was exactly how it should be. 5 years ago, Leora began, her voice steady now, practiced from 100 speeches but still carrying the weight of truth. I was nobody, a statistic. Another single mother the system had chewed up and forgotten. She paused, letting silence settle. I owned nothing, not even dignity. I'd sold that for $50 I never got. Some people in the audience shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward. But one mistake, one wrong number, connected me to someone who'd been where I was, who remembered what hunger felt like, who chose in that moment to see me as human. She found Cale's eyes in the crowd. That choice saved my life. But more than that, it reminded me that I had power I'd forgotten. The power to notice, to care, to act. She gestured to the screens behind her. Numbers appeared. 73,000 families helped. 400 million in predatory debt erased. 12 states with reformed lending laws. 6 companies shut down for illegal practices. These aren't just numbers, Leora said. They're names, faces. Children who ate tonight because someone answered when their parent cried for help. The screen changed. Photos now. Real people. Real families. Sophia and Luna thriving in their apartment. Patricia smiling with her daughter who'd finally called her back. Teresa, who'd spoken at that first press conference, now running her own nonprofit. Every single one of these people was invisible until someone chose to see them, Leora continued. Until someone decided their crisis mattered. Her voice softened. I'm not special. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who got lucky enough to send the right message to the right person at the right time. She looked directly at the camera recording this. But here's what I need you to understand. You don't need luck to change someone's life. You just need to choose to care when it's inconvenient, to help when it costs you something, to believe that the person asking for help isn't trying to take advantage, but genuinely drowning. Tears gathered in her eyes. Because somewhere tonight, in an apartment that's too cold, a mother is holding a hungry baby and wondering if anyone in the world cares whether they survive. She paused. Be the person who answers. Be the person who sees. Be the wrong number that turns out to be exactly right. The room rose in applause, but Leora barely heard it. She was looking at Auron, who was clapping enthusiastically, not understanding the weight of her words but feeling the love behind them. After the gala, after the handshakes and photos and promises to do more, Leora and Cale found themselves alone on the balcony overlooking the city. The same city where everything had started, where desperation had met mercy, where one message had sparked a revolution. Do you ever regret it? Kyle asked quietly. Everything that came after? The threats, the lawsuits, the fight? Leora thought about it honestly. Every day I'm scared, she admitted. Scared I'll fail someone. Scared the system will find new ways to trap people. Scared it's not enough. She looked at him. But regret? Never. Because even if we'd only saved one family, even if it had just been me and Aaron eating that night, it still would have been worth answering. Cale smiled, the real one he saved for moments like this. I'm glad I picked up, he said simply. Me too. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe. Somewhere down there, right now, someone was struggling. Someone was hungry. Someone was one bill away from disaster, but also somewhere down there, because of what they'd built, someone was answering. Someone was helping. Someone was proving that the world didn't have to be as cruel as it often was. Leora's phone buzzed. A notification from the Foundation's emergency line. New. Message received. Family in crisis. Help dispatched. She smiled and put the phone away. The cycle continued. Not perfectly, not fast enough, but steadily, relentlessly. One message at a time, one choice at a time, one person deciding that another person's suffering mattered more than their convenience. And in a cold apartment across the city, a mother received a text from an unknown number. We got your message. Help is on the way. You're not alone. She read it 3 times, not believing. Then she pulled her baby close and cried tears that weren't despair anymore. They were hope, the most dangerous, powerful, contagious thing in the world. Hope that someone saw her. Hope that she mattered. Hope that tomorrow might be different than today. And somewhere above the city, in a building made of glass and ambition and second chances, Leora looked at Cale and said the words that had become their promise. Same time tomorrow? He nodded. Same time tomorrow. Because the work was never finished. The fight was never over. But as long as people chose to answer when someone cried for help, as long as kindness remained contagious, as long as one wrong message could still find exactly the right person, there was hope. And hope, Leora had learned, was enough to change the world. One message, one choice, one moment of mercy at a time.